Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Lulva Kapadia. I'm a chocolate business coach and I welcome you to this series of how cacao beans become chocolate part 2. So in the last video we talked about the cacao farms and we saw how the cacao pods are grown, in what climatic conditions, in which belts and in which parts of the country they are grown in, and what is the role that a farmer plays in bringing this beautiful pod to life. And we saw how the process of harvestation is done, what are the duration and how do we harvest the pod. We also saw we cut open the pod and we saw this white pulp and cacao beans, and then we saw that it goes through the process of fermentation, and it takes nearly 6 to 7 days for the fermentation to get complete, where the seed, the cacao seed, it just loses all the white pulp around it, and the process of fermentation gets complete. Now in this video we are going to see what happens after the process of fermentation. So this process is called drying, and this is done at the farm only by the farmers. So the fermented beans, the moisture content in the fermented beans is quite high, and this will cause mold development in the beans, and this can reduce the shelf life of the bean. So just to avoid all these things, drying takes place, and in the process of drying also a lot of flavor notes are developed. The acidity of the cacao beans reduces. So this step is actually a very important step and it needs to be done in a proper manner. Now I've seen that in many areas and in many regions the cacao beans is dried directly under the sun, where the beans are spread on the road, and sometimes these roads are tar roads, and which is not good for the bean because the bean would catch the flavor from the tar roads, because the beans are very sensitive that way, right? And then I've also seen methods where the beans are just spread, a plastic sheet is laid on the floor and the beans are spreaded on that, and they are drying directly under the sun for 6 to 7 days. Even that is not a right method because there is a lot of dust around in the farm, and the beans, they sort of catch those dust particles. So best way is that if we can have high racks, normally farmers they keep their beans on the high racks and either under direct sunlight, or they create a greenhouse where an indirect sunlight is given to these beans. Now the ultimate goal is to reduce the moisture level, and the moisture of the beans post sun drying process should be between 6 to 8%. Now why this is important? If the moisture is above 8%, the shelf life of the bean will reduce. The beans will catch a lot of mold, and in the shipping and transit process where the beans are being shipped to the craft chocolate makers, the beans might get spoiled. So it is very important that the moisture level is kept between 6 to 8%. Now how do we know that the moisture has reached certain levels? So what does the farmers do? They either they have gotten that experience where they visually can see and understand at what moisture percentage is the bean at, or they have professional tools which measures the moisture in the cacao bean, so they have these tools with them. Or just by looking or shaking the bean and hearing that sound of dryness, you can understand that it is completely dried. We also don't want the moisture level to go under 5% in the cacao beans, because that would make our beans very brittle and easily breakable, and they get damaged, and it will also affect the flavor notes in the beans that are developing. Also, the duration that is required for drying depends on different climatic condition. The moisture content in the air, the season in which you are drying, if it's summer season, rainy season, or winter season. In rainy season it takes more time for the beans to get dried, and in summer season the process is much faster. So all these conditions play a very important role, and the farmer who has harvested the beans and who has done the process of fermentation and now who is doing the process of drying the beans knows exactly what time duration the bean is going to require. At times the craft chocolate makers, they also visit the farm, and if the farmers they don't have proper knowledge or education in this particular segment, the craft chocolate makers they go and they help the farmers understand, they educate the farmers the right way of doing the process, because every step really matters in the process of creating a good quality chocolate. So I hope you have understood a base of how cacao pods are harvested, how it is fermented, and how the sun drying process is done at the farm. And now the beans are finally ready to be shipped to craft chocolate makers. But how does this brittle dark cacao bean becomes into silky smooth chocolate? So we are going to explore this in our next video.